The sinkhole opened before breakfast and swallowed the playground at Willow Creek Homes. By the time I got there, the yellow slide was hanging over a raw hole in the earth. The swings were twisted down toward the center, and a little boy in pajama pants was asking his mother if their house was going to fall in next. She did not answer him. She just held his shoulders and looked at me like I might be able to tell her the ground had only made a small mistake. But ground does not make mistakes like that. It keeps secrets until it cannot hold them anymore. My name is Lena Harper. I read soil for a living. Most people see dirt. I see layers, stains, pressure, water paths, buried history, and the kind of truth nobody can smooth over with a ribbon cutting. That morning, Willow Creek Homes looked like every affordable housing brochure my mother had ever smiled beside. Neat townhouses, small front porches, fresh sidewalks, a shared playground in the middle meant to tell families they had finally landed somewhere safe. Only now the center of that safe place had split open. Fire trucks lined the curb. Police tapes snapped in the cold spring air. Parents stood outside in robes, fleece jackets, work uniforms, and slippers, holding children who should have been brushing their teeth for school. A little girl kept crying because her backpack was still in Unit 12. A father stood with one hand over his mouth, staring at the broken play surface. "They were on that slide yesterday," he said. Nobody answered. The city engineer, Marcus Webb, met me at the tape line. His hard hat was too clean for the morning he was having. "Stormwater?" he asked. He wanted me to say yes. I wanted to say yes, too. A stormwater failure was ugly, expensive, embarrassing, and fixable. I looked down into the hole. The lower wall of the pit had a dark gray band running through it. Not normal wet soil, not old mulch, not simple fill. It had a faint sheen where moisture had collected. Then the smell reached me. Solvent, old dry cleaning, metallic, chemical. I pulled on gloves. "Nobody touches that dirt bare-handed," I said. Marcus went still. "Contamination." I don't know yet. But I did know one thing. The ground had not failed that morning. It had confessed. I took photographs from every angle. Wide shots. Close shots. The slide, the broken rubber surface, the stained soil layer, the way the collapse had exposed a buried history no family had agreed to live on. Behind me, a woman asked a firefighter if she could go back inside for her son's medication. The firefighter looked toward Marcus. Marcus looked toward me. That was the first human moment that cut through the professional part of me, because this was not a fenced industrial site. It was not a dead lot behind a warehouse. It was home. Children had dragged toy trucks across this ground. Parents had opened bedroom windows at night. Toddlers had sat in rubber mulch with snacks in their hands. If the soil was wrong, the harm was not abstract. It had been under their feet. I collected samples from the sinkhole wall, the exposed lower band, and nearby surface soil. Every vial got labeled, sealed, logged, and photographed. Chain of custody matters when people start lying. And I already felt the first lie forming in the air, not from a person yet. From the way Marcus kept checking his phone. From the way city staff spoke softly near the edge of the tape. From the way one of them said, "We should keep the language careful," while parents stood 10 feet away asking if their homes were safe. Careful. I have always hated that word when danger is standing in front of you. By the time I drove the samples back to my office, the playground was blocked off. Families were being told to stay clear, and the city was already drafting a statement that would say almost nothing. Harper Geological Consulting sat in a low brick building in East Boulder, between a physical therapy clinic and a place that repaired espresso machines. My name was on the glass door in plain black letters. No slogan, no mountain logo, no promise to protect anyone's project timeline. Inside, the lab smelled like coffee, paper, and the faint mineral dust that never really leaves. I logged the samples before I took off my jacket. Cooler seal intact. Sample IDs matched. Photo log complete. Field notes complete. Then I started the first run. While the machine processed, I washed my hands even though I had not touched soil in an hour. That was not science. That was nerves. The result came back that afternoon. PCE, tetrachloroethylene, a dry-cleaning solvent, stubborn in soil, worse in groundwater, dangerous when vapors move into enclosed spaces where families breathe. The level was high enough that I sat back so fast my chair hit the cabinet. I checked the sample ID, the location, the calibration, the dilution notes. The number did not become better because I stared at it. I did not trust the first run, not because the lab was sloppy, because I wanted it to be wrong, so I ran it again. Fresh vial, new gloves, clean bench, documented step by step. Same contaminant, same problem. I taped both results into the working file and wrote one sentence in my notes. PCE present at levels requiring immediate residential exposure review. I underlined residential. Then I called Marcus. "What do you have?" he asked. "PCE." He went quiet. "How certain?" I ran it twice. Could the collapse have exposed something isolated? "The collapse exposed it," I said. "It did not create it." He exhaled. "Lena, we need to be careful with language." "No," I said. "We need to be accurate with language." Another pause, then he lowered his voice. "You understand what Willow Creek is?" I almost laughed. There was no humor in me. I understand what PCE is. Willow Creek was not just a housing project. It was my mother's project. Patricia Harper had spent 20 years in Boulder planning politics. City commissioner, housing advocate, public face of smart, compassionate development, as one local magazine once called her. Willow Creek was her victory lap. Affordable homes on land nobody powerful had wanted until she made wanting it look moral. She stood at the opening ceremony with a silver shovel in her hands and a little girl in a pink jacket beside her. The newspaper photo was still framed in her hallway. Patricia Harper, champion of housing families can afford. My mother had built a legacy on that ground, and now that ground smelled like solvent. After I hung up, I requested the original environmental assessment from city records. The clerk who answered sounded young and tired. "I see the final clearance letter," she said. "I already have that. I need the full assessment." "This may be the environmental record." "No," I said. "A clearance letter references an assessment. I need the assessment. Raw sampling data, attachments, drafts, consultant notes, everything." Keys clicked. It might be in archives. "Digital or physical?" "I'm not sure." "What's your name?" A tiny pause. "Megan." "Megan, I'm not trying to make your day harder, but families may be living over contaminated soil. If older soil data exist, I need them today." "I understand," she said, but her voice had changed. Not unhelpful, careful. By evening, I had 3 city staff copied on emails and no assessment. By the time I tried to open the folder Marcus had sent earlier, the link no longer worked. Access denied. I stared at the screen, not lost. Missing. There is a difference. Lost means someone made a mess. Missing means someone made a choice. I should have gone home. Instead, I opened the photo from the sinkhole and zoomed in on the stained soil layer. That dark band had been there before the playground, before the sidewalks, before the grand opening, before my mother smiled for the paper. The ground had been telling the truth longer than any of us. I just did not know yet who had told it to be quiet. I drove to my mother's house that Sunday with the lab results in my bag and the naive part of me still hoping she would be horrified. That embarrassed me later. At 34, with a PhD, a consulting practice, a divorce behind me, and expert testimony in more courtrooms than I cared to remember, there was still a daughter in me who believed her mother might look at proof and choose me. Patricia lived in a mid-century ranch in Mapleton Hill with pale stone planters, trimmed junipers, and windows that always looked recently washed. Her house had the kind of quiet that came from order, not peace. She opened the door wearing linen pants and a blue sweater, her silver hair pinned back. She looked like a woman who had already decided how the conversation should go. "Lena," she said. Not honey, not what happened, just my name. "I found PCE at Willow Creek," I said. Her hand stayed on the door. For 1 second, something moved across her face. Not surprise, recognition. Then it was gone. "Come in," she said. We sat in her kitchen. The counters were spotless. A vase of white tulips stood near the sink. The framed Willow Creek article hung in the hallway where I could see the silver shovel in her hands. I placed the lab report on the table. She did not touch it. That told me more than if she had grabbed it. "There was contamination before construction," I said. "You don't know that." "I know the contaminant. I know the soil layer. I know it predates the collapse. Site conditions can be complicated." "That's your public voice." Her eyes lifted. I had heard that voice my whole life. At council meetings, at neighborhood forums, at charity breakfasts. The voice that turned opposition into misunderstanding and risk into opportunity. "Lena," she said, "you were called in for an emergency assessment, not a political excavation. There are families in those homes. And if you throw the wrong words into the air, those families lose their homes before the facts are complete." I stared at her. That was the first time I heard the shape of her defense, not denial, trade-off. She was already balancing children's lungs against headlines, property values, relocation costs, and the story she had spent years telling about herself. I pushed the report closer. "Did you know?" Her mouth tightened. "Do not ask me that in my own kitchen." "Did you know?" She looked at the paper then, still did not touch it. "Willow Creek gave people homes on contaminated soil. It took a dead parcel and turned it into housing families could afford." "Did you know?" Her eyes hardened. "You think truth is clean because you work with samples in labeled bottles." "No, I think truth is dirty. That's why people bury it." Her face changed, small, but I saw it. I had inherited her hands. Narrow palms, strong fingers, short nails. The same hand that had signed my school forms. The same hand that held scissors at ribbon cuttings. The same hand that might have signed approvals I had not yet seen. She stood. "You should leave." I looked at the report on her table. "You haven't asked if the families are safe." She did not answer, and that was the moment I stopped hoping she would be horrified. Back at my office, I worked until nearly midnight. I pulled old land use records, historic industrial maps, dry cleaning locations, groundwater direction, soil classifications, previous parcel ownership. Nothing proved the cover-up by itself, but the shape was forming. The land had a past. The city file had a hole. My mother had recognized the contaminant before I finished explaining it. At 11:41, my secure email pinged. Unknown sender. No body. One attachment. Subject line, "You need this." The scan was crooked, like someone had taken it fast. It was part of an old environmental report. Willow Creek site. Pre-construction. PCE detected in subsurface samples. Further review recommended prior to residential approval. I read it once, then again. The room went very still. Someone had found the contamination before the first family moved in. Someone had warned the city. I kept scrolling. The bottom of the page showed a routing note. Reviewed. Initials, PH, my mother. I printed the page, labeled the source, saved the file in 3 places, and made a chain note. Then I sat there for a long time with the paper under my desk lamp. One page did not prove everything, but it proved the warning existed. And if it existed, then the next question was simple. Who buried it? The answer came from a man named Ray Santos. He called the next morning from a number I did not know. His voice was rough, like gravel in a coffee can. "You got my page," he said. I sat down slowly. "You sent it." "I sent 1 page. There are more. There used to be." I wrote his name on my notepad. "Who are you?" "Civil engineer. Retired now. I was on the Willow Creek review team before I was removed from it." My pen stopped. "Removed why?" "Because I wrote the thing nobody wanted in the file." We met 2 hours later at a diner outside town where the coffee was bad and the booths had cracked red vinyl. Ray was in his late 60s, thick shoulders, white stubble, hands that looked like they had held rolled plans and pipe wrenches for a lifetime. He sat facing the door. That told me something. He slid a folder across the table. I kept copies because I knew they would say I remembered wrong. Inside were old notes, a draft report, field observations, and a memo with my mother's initials on the bottom corner. He watched me read. The soil was flagged before construction, he said. Not maybe, not barely, flagged. Why wasn't it stopped? His mouth twisted. Because stopping it would have killed the project. He looked out the window. Your mother had council votes lined up, grants tied in, press ready, nonprofit partners, housing advocates, the whole machine. Nobody wanted to be the engineer who delayed affordable homes over dirty dirt. Dirty dirt, the phrase hit harder than it should have. Did you tell Patricia? He looked back at me. I told Commissioner Harper in a conference room with 6 people present. I told her the site needed more testing before residential approval. What did she say? She said the community could not afford another delay. He slid one more page from the folder. It was a second scan. This one had more than initials, approval routing sheet. Project may proceed pending final clearance. Signature line, Patricia D. Harper, my mother's full signature, same project, same warning, same hand. For a while I could not hear the diner, not the waitress, not the plates, not the old radio near the counter, just that sentence in my head. She knew. Ray leaned back. I'm sorry, he said. I hated him for a second, not because he was wrong. Because he was the person in front of me when my mother became someone else. What happened to you? I asked. He gave a small laugh. Transferred. Frozen out. Contract review went bad. Then I retired before they could make a cleaner story out of me. Why come forward now? His eyes moved to the folder. Because I saw that playground on the news. His voice cracked on playground. Only once. I can live with a lot of things, Dr. Harper. I can't live with children standing beside a hole I warned them about. That was the first time that day I nearly cried. Not because of my mother, because of the boys in pajama pants, because of the little girl and her backpack, because every technical page in that folder ended at a child's bedroom window. I took Ray's documents, logged them, scanned them, and sent a secure package to Dr. Eliza Thornton at the Federal Environmental Office in Denver. Eliza and I had worked together before. She was not warm in the usual way. She trusted method, chain of custody, clean data, and people who did not dramatize what the numbers already proved. She called me after reviewing the first set. How clean is your chain? She asked. Clean. How clean? Field notes, photo log, seals, split samples, repeat analysis, old assessment source log, witness record, approval routing, signature page. A pause. Send everything through secure transfer. No city portal. That sentence told me she understood. Do you think the families should be relocated? I asked. I think you already know they should not be sleeping there until vapor testing is complete. I closed my eyes. Yes. Then say that. I did. Say it again, where someone has to record it. That afternoon, I filed a formal hazard notification recommending immediate residential exposure review, vapor testing, and temporary relocation for the units closest to the collapse. By evening, the city's tone changed. Not enough, but enough. Families were told to pack for a temporary stay. Some cried. Some shouted. Some asked if their children had been poisoned. Those were the questions that did what the lab report could not. Because I could explain PCE, vapor intrusion, screening levels, exposure pathways, and sampling uncertainty. But no parent hears uncertainty when their child has slept above contaminated soil. They hear, was my baby breathing this? A mother from Unit 9 grabbed my sleeve near the temporary assistance table. Her name was Camille. I had seen her at the site that morning holding a toddler. Tell me straight, she said. Should I be scared? I looked at her son, asleep against her shoulder, thumb still near his mouth. You should be angry, I said, and you should not sleep there tonight. Her face crumpled, not loudly, just enough. Where are we supposed to go? That question should have been answered before any statement went out, before any press conference, before any city official said temporary inconvenience, because displacement is not just a logistics problem. It is a little boy's inhaler in a drawer. It is a grandmother's medicine. It is a child's stuffed bear left on a bed because someone said they were only going to be gone for a night. It is a mother trying not to cry in front of a toddler while strangers in vests stand between her and her own front door. That night, I drove past Willow Creek after dark. Lights were on in some units, dark in others. Police tape moved in the wind. The playground looked worse under floodlights. The slide hung at an angle like a broken promise. I sat in my truck and thought about my mother holding a silver shovel where that hole was now. My phone buzzed. Mom. I let it ring until it stopped. Then a voicemail appeared. I did not play it. Not yet. The professional complaint arrived 2 days later. A formal notice from the state licensing board. Allegation, conflict of interest, compromised objectivity, improper public statements, mishandling of environmental data. Submitted by Patricia Harper, my own mother, had filed against my license. I read the notice in my office while my assistant stood in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee and saying nothing. That was Patricia's move. Not to argue the soil, not to answer the warning report. To make me the problem, biased daughter, emotional professional, unstable expert, contaminated witness. It was smart. I hated that it was smart. If she could make the investigation about me, she could make people question the data. If she could make people question the data, she could protect the old story a little longer. I called Eliza. My mother filed a licensing complaint, I said. Eliza was quiet. Then, did you change anything after receiving it? No. Good, don't. That's your advice. My advice is to keep your chain clean, keep your language narrow, and stop expecting shame to do the work of evidence. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was exactly what I needed. The next week became a blur of samples, relocation meetings, city statements, federal requests, parent questions, and legal language that tried to sound calmer than the truth deserved. Diane Okonkwo found me in the hallway outside City Records on a Thursday afternoon. She was the records clerk I had met on one zoning case years earlier. Sharp eyes, silver braids. A woman who could find a missing file faster than most lawyers could find their own office. She walked past me once, then turned and said, "Dr. Harper, you dropped this." I had not dropped anything. She handed me a sealed envelope and kept walking. Inside were file access logs, old email printouts, and a records movement sheet for Willow Creek. The missing assessment had not vanished. It had been removed from the public project file and placed in restricted internal storage after Ray's warning. The request line had a name, Patricia Harper. There was also an email from my mother to planning staff. Please ensure public review materials reflect final clearance only. Draft concerns should not be circulated without context. Without context. My mother's words had gloves too. Diane's note was at the bottom of the envelope. Some files go missing because people move them. Some people should not be the only ones who remember. I sat in my truck and read that note 3 times. Then I added Diane to the witness log. The evidence had become a wall. Lab results, Ray's report, approval's signature, records logs, my mother's email, federal sampling, families relocated, license complaint, every piece fit. And the more it fit, the less I wanted to look at the person in the center. My mother called again that night. This time I answered. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You've made this very public." I looked at the sample log open on my desk. The sinkhole was public. "You know what I mean." "Yes," I said. "You mean I refused to keep it useful." Her breathing changed. "You always were cruel when you thought you were right." That one landed, because it sounded like childhood. Like report cards where an A- became a lecture about discipline. Like debate trophies she displayed when they helped her image and dismissed when they did not. Like a mother who taught me to be exact, then hated the exactness when it turned toward her. "There are families in hotels," I said. There are also families who would not have had homes without Willow Creek. You built homes over contaminated soil. I built homes where no one else would. You hid the warning. I managed uncertainty. No, I said, you managed liability. The line went quiet. Then she said, do you think truth will house those people? Do you think your clean little report will tuck their children in at night? I made a decision in a city that needed housing. You made a decision and let other people breathe the risk. Her voice hardened. You have no idea what leadership costs. I thought of Camille holding her sleeping son at the relocation table. I know who paid for yours. She hung up. The hearing for my licensing complaint was small. No packed room, no cameras, no dramatic table. Just a conference space with a panel, my attorney, my records, and my mother sitting across from me in a cream jacket with her hands folded like she had never touched a shovel in her life. Her attorney argued that I had a personal conflict, that I rushed conclusions, that I used inflammatory language, that my actions damaged public trust and caused unnecessary panic. Unnecessary panic. I thought of the broken slide, the barefoot families, the little boy asking if he could still live there. When my turn came, I did not talk about my mother first. I talked about chain of custody, field notes, sample locations, repeat analysis, independent confirmation, vapor concern, exposure risk. Then Ray testified. His voice shook at first, then steadied when he described the old warning. Diane Okonkwo testified by recorded statement. Calm, exact, devastating. Eliza's federal memo confirmed the sampling protocol and the need for residential review. My attorney laid my mother's complaint beside the approval sheet, the records email, and the warning report. Not for drama, for sequence. My mother approved the project after the warning. My mother requested public materials show final clearance only. My mother filed against my license after I uncovered the old report. The panel did not need me to call it retaliation. The timeline did that by itself. When they dismissed the complaint, my hands went numb. No discipline, no misconduct, no finding against my license. I did not smile. My mother did not look at me. Outside the hearing room, she was waiting near the elevators. For one terrible second, she looked older. Not powerful, not historic, not a public servant. Just my mother with tired eyes and lipstick too carefully applied. You won, she said. I shook my head. No one won. That irritated her more than anger would have. You think that makes you noble. I think it makes me awake. Her mouth trembled, only once. Then she recovered. They will remember me for Willow Creek. Yes, I said, they will. That was the cruelest thing I could have said because it was true. Her legacy had survived zoning fights, elections, editorials, budget wars, and developers who thought compassion was a branding problem. It would not survive the soil. She stepped closer. I was trying to get families housed. You were trying to be the person who got them housed. Her face changed. There it was, the wound under the policy, not affordable housing, not community need, not leadership. Legacy. Patricia Harper needed Willow Creek to stand because Patricia Harper had built herself into it. And when the land warned her, she chose the story over the people. For the first time, she looked like she might answer as my mother, not as commissioner, not as a public figure. Just as the woman who used to tie my boots before hikes and tell me the earth kept better records than people. Then the elevator opened. She walked in. The doors closed before either of us said goodbye. The federal findings came weeks later. I read them in my office with the windows open and a cold cup of coffee beside my laptop. PCE confirmed in subsurface soil. Vapor intrusion concern confirmed in the closest units. Contamination consistent with pre-construction conditions. Pre-construction warning existed. Warning was not included in public review file. Residential approval proceeded despite recommendation for further review. The language was dry, almost bloodless. That is how official truth often arrives. No thunder, no music, just sentences that cannot be unsaid. Willow Creek families were relocated longer term. Some cried with relief. Some cried because relief did not pay for lost routines, lost sleep, lost trust. Children were tested. Homes were sealed off for further work. The playground was removed. The slide disappeared first. I watched workers lifted onto a truck. A little boy stood beside his father across the street and cried because it had been his favorite. His father picked him up. I turned away. Sometimes the thing that saves people still hurts them. Ray Santos had his record corrected in the city file. Diane Okonkwo retired 2 months later. She sent me a postcard with no message except her name. Marcus kept his job, but he stopped using careful language around me. My mother resigned from every board before they could remove her. The newspaper used the phrase, "legacy under review." I thought that was polite to the point of violence. My phone buzzed the day after the article ran. "Mom," I let it go to voicemail. This time I played it. Her voice was smaller than I expected. "Lena," she said, "you should know I believed the project mattered. I still believe that." A pause. I don't know how to be sorry in a way that changes anything. Another pause, then softer. "You were right about the soil." The message ended. No apology. Not really. But the closest Patricia Harper had ever come to surrender was admitting the ground had told the truth. I saved the voicemail for a day. Then I deleted it. Not because I hated her. Because I did not want to keep collecting almost apologies like evidence. Months later, I stood at Willow Creek again. The homes closest to the playground were empty. Some families had chosen not to return. Some were still waiting for answers. Fencing surrounded the old play area, but the hole had been filled with clean material, compacted layer by layer. No ribbon cutting this time. No silver shovel. No speeches. Just clean fill, survey stakes, and a pale rectangle of earth where children might one day play again if the place earned that right. Camille came by while I was there. Her son was with her, holding a toy truck. He looked older already, the way children do after adults fail them. "Will it be safe?" she asked. I looked at the clean fill, the vapor wells, the monitoring points, the reports in my hand. The answer was not pretty, but it was honest. "It can be," I said, "if nobody asks the ground to lie again." She nodded. That was all. After she left, I stood alone by the fence. Wind moved through the empty space where the swings had been. I thought about my mother's silver shovel, Ray's old warning, Diane's envelope, the little girl's backpack, the boy asking if he could still live there, the license complaint with my mother's name on it, and the dark band of soil that had waited years to be seen. People like to say truth rises. I do not think that is right. Truth stays where it is. We are the ones who finally dig deep enough to meet it. I looked down at the clean ground. For the first time since the sinkhole opened, it did not feel like the earth was accusing me. It felt like it was resting, not healed, not forgiven, resting. And I stood there until the wind settled, listening to the quiet place where the playground used to be, knowing the ground had told the truth long before any of us were brave enough to hear it.